President Trump promised this would be the year of Operation Aurora, a look at how his mass deportation campaign worked and didn't. A small business built up a decade of loyal customers in Denver only to be told to move because the city messed up.
My dad has really been thinking about it a lot. He's really stressed about it.
The latest Republican to join the race for governor says the current governor should be executed. Colorado's enormous mobilization to feed our neighbors when food benefits were threatened is still helping families.
We were able to purchase a lot more food.
And a look back at 50-plus weeks of giving, how your generosity changed this state for the better. Tonight on Next. Colorado entered 2025 with the expectation that this state would be at the center of President Trump's promised mass deportation effort. Cities in other states have received far more attention in year one, but we have seen large-scale raids here as well. Our Angeline McCall looks at what we know and don't know about who is being detained and deported.
As we enter a new year, it's stereotypical to look back, especially on promises from our president.
On day one, I will launch the largest deportation program in American history.
Deportation promises were announced in Aurora on the campaign trail.
Police!
Now, a year later, the Trump administration is boasting it has deported 650,000 people. NPR says there's no publicly available data to support that number.
11 months ago, I inherited a mess, and I'm fixing it.
Other measure marks tell us what is happening, though. And in funding for immigration enforcement, we saw expansion under the One Big Beautiful Bill by $170 billion over the next 4 years, making it the largest funded federal law enforcement agency, even more than the FBI. And right now, those funds are fueling record high levels of detainment.
We inherited the worst border anywhere in the world, and we quickly turned it into the strongest border in the history of our country.
When Trump entered office, ICE data showed about 39,000 people were detained. That number jumped to more than 65,000 by the end of the year. No prior administration has ever held more than 50,200 people per day on average in immigration detention until now. ICE deportation flights have also increased by 129% from Trump's first 3 months in office, from about 437 flights, and his last 3 months rising to 1,000 flights per month, something that's caused protests and backlash here in Denver.
They're making money off of deporting and transferring immigrants, separating them from their family.
While the Denver community has pushed back on enforcement, Trump promises to continue his plan. A lot of people may remember the Obama years when we saw a record 3.1 million ICE deportations. In one single year, we saw more than 400,000 people removed under former President Obama. That number is still higher than under President Trump's first term. And of course, I think we're still trying to figure out exactly what that number is for this first year in office, and we won't get that until, of course, January.
And the persistent question, too, is about who is being removed, right? The original pledge from President Trump on the campaign trail was going to be the worst of the worst violent criminals. And then very quickly it was just do numbers and grab anybody who does not have legal status to be here.
Right, of course, that was the promise, right? Target criminals. What we have seen under President Trump's term this year really has been focused on even legal pathways. We're talking TPS, we're talking different changes to status that people had that was revoked under them. So they were in legal status, now no longer, now removable. And so we have seen a big chunk of that percentage of removals of people who thought that they were probably pretty safe.
Right, they thought they were playing by the rules because they were, and then the administration said, well, we're going to change the rules. All right, Angeline McCall, thank you. Been a tough couple months to be a food truck in Denver. You remember that viral video of the city health inspector pouring bleach in a repeat offender's food so the unlicensed truck couldn't sell it? Well, now the city is telling a licensed taco truck to move out of the spot where it sat for a decade. Our Spencer Soisher's been looking into this, and Spencer, the city says it is a zoning issue with this beloved business, but you found the city had actually messed up by approving the truck's location year after year.
Yeah, Tacos y Torta El Peluche on Federal has built up a strong customer base, has great reviews online. They've been licensed by the city since 2013, and they're parked in the parking lot of a law firm. Law firm told me they want them there, they don't want them gone. But the city just recently caught that it should have never let them operate there in the first place. The city says this truck is parked in an area with zoning that does not allow food trucks, and that's not new, but the city didn't catch it in annual renewal applications until recently. In 2023, Denver redid its licensing process, moving it from in-person permitting to online, and that online app added a new question. Is this on private property? If you mark yes, it asks you to provide an address to get another temporary permit, and the law firm location is not eligible for that second permit. Now that truck owner is worried he may lose more than a decade of clientele at a spot he wouldn't have ever set up in if he knew he couldn't be there.
The guy that I talked to, I told him I've been here for 11, 12 years and I've never heard about this. It's like, yeah, I don't know why nobody caught this before, I'm sorry. This is what pays the bills, so what pays our mortgage, our car insurance, bills. It's the whole thing.
All right, so you might think, all right, you have wheels on that truck, just move up the block or somewhere else on the street. There's a couple of problems with that. The owner says many of the eligible spots are now taken by food trucks that weren't there when they opened a decade ago, and there may be issues at those too. The city told me this afternoon that, quote, a lot more of these scenarios are happening now with this new online system. Other trucks that were approved in the past are now being told they're parked in a spot where they legally can't be either, Kyle.
I mean, this is a very difficult setup, right? Because as you point out, if you want a great spot, you think you're in a legal spot, then other people get the second and third best spots, then they tell you to move. You're SOL. I mean, at the end of the day, it looks like this person's being punished for following the rules.
Right, they followed the rules. They put down the address that they were supposed to. Had they not done that, who knows if this gets caught. I think they're concerned that that's what's going to happen here. We saw with that Taco Colorado place where the bleach was poured in the food, that the health department and the city couldn't find where they were going at times because they weren't licensed. All right, these guys are licensed. We found them, and now they can't be here.
All right, Spencer Soysher, thank you. Tina Peters' lawyers are using a case from the 1700s to attempt to free the former Mesa County election clerk from prison. She's asking an appeals court to recognize President Trump's so-called pardon of her state conviction. Peters is serving 9 years after being convicted on state charges for a scheme to breach voting systems. She was in there looking for proof of election rigging in the 2020 presidential race. Trump's pardon power does not extend to state crimes, but he gave her a pardon anyway. Peters' attorneys argue that President George Washington once issued pardons to people convicted of both state and federal crimes during the Whiskey Rebellion of 1795. They're claiming Colorado's appeals court no longer has any jurisdiction over her case because of this so-called presidential pardon. The appeals court will hear arguments on that in a couple of weeks. Ultimately, this case could head to the U.S. Supreme Court, where Peters' attorneys have publicly predicted that the Republican majority will rule to expand Trump's powers. The latest Republican running for governor says the current governor should be executed, hanged, along with Colorado's Attorney General and Secretary of State, hanged for treason. MAGA podcaster Joe Oltmann says all three state leaders who are Jewish are part of a quote-unquote synagogue of Satan Jews and should be executed.
I think Jared Polis should be hung. I think Jenna Griswold should be hung. I think Phil Weiser should be hung. I think they should hang by their neck until dead.
Oltmann says his top priority if he's elected governor would be freeing Tina Peters, who's serving prison time for tampering with voting systems in search of election rigging, which Oltmann claims has fixed every election from the governor's race to recent school board races in Douglas County, where he lives. Oltmann has suggested that President Trump should institute military tribunals and have tens of thousands of Americans executed. Oltmann recently said, quote, "I think violence is probably the only solution at this point." Despite Oltmann's years' worth of calls for executions, he has maintained a prominent role in Colorado Republican politics, speaking at official party events, endorsing candidates, and hosting fundraisers at his chain of gun shops. Denver's minimum wage is about to become one of the highest in the country. On Thursday, it heads up to $19.29 per hour. The city's Department of Finance adjusts the minimum wage each year based on inflation. Denver will have one of the top 10 highest minimum wages in the country at that point. The highest rate is a suburb outside Seattle, $21.65 per hour. The federal minimum wage, so the floor nationwide, is $7.25. Colorado's minimum wage will rise to $15.16 next year. I certainly hope that the kids in your life had a joyful holiday season and you helped to make sure that a bunch of other kids did, short-term and long-term. Most recently, raising nearly $50,000 last week for the Anchor Center for Blind Children. They help families with kids who have vision impairments or blindness figure out how to do life, how to give those kids a path toward joy and purpose and independence. If you happen to miss that micro-giving campaign during the holiday break, we have conveniently put that QR code up for you once more. You can scan that or text the word thanks to 303-871-1491 to get the link to join me and a bunch of others in giving. And as always, even $5 helps because it adds up fast. In fact, in a moment, we're going to walk you through every one of your 50-plus micro-giving campaigns this year. $3 million worth of impact. When you see this, city by city, town by town, it is staggering what you've done.
We learned a lot about our community's resilience, a lot about our volunteer base and the resources that our volunteers are willing to donate.
A food bank learned how to survive a SNAP benefits disruption and is now preparing for more hurdles from the federal government. It's become one of the biggest, most far-reaching community service efforts in Colorado, even though most of its participants are strangers. It's one of the largest charitable campaigns in this state, even though it is not the work of wealthy people. Quietly, constantly, your $5 micro-giving through our Word of Thanks campaigns have become an enormous force for good in Colorado, raising $3 million this year, $17 million since 2020. Here is all the good you did, week by week. Your relentless generosity changed lives in Colorado this year. Week after week, $5 donation after $5 donation, you raised more than $3 million for nonprofits across the state. I want to remind you of each one so you know all the good you've done. Hold on. Here we go. You began 2025 building Habitat homes in memory of President Jimmy Carter, helped the Second Chance Center open housing for people coming out of prison or homelessness. You were there for families facing medical expenses in the Vail Valley, helped to open a cold weather shelter in Aurora, packed weekend meals for kids in Larimer County, and funded legal representation for domestic violence survivors. You paired veterans with service dogs, helped teen moms graduate, replaced federal funding, pulled away from a Girls in STEM program, career training for low-income women. You built an inclusive playground in Jefferson County, did fire mitigation in Southwest Colorado, covered rent for formerly homeless families, and supported kids grieving the loss of a parent. When the federal government pulled funding for naturalization classes at Aurora Community College, you raised enough money to keep them going for years. You fought hidden poverty in the suburbs of Douglas County, filled imagination libraries, food boxes for homebound seniors, and restored a mental health program for farmers and ranchers when it was hit by budget cuts. You helped Northwest Colorado prepare for fire season, funded college for Latino scholars, fought hunger in Aurora, Dougco, Telluride, and Montrose County. You expanded vet care at Max Fund, mental health support for LGBTQ youth, free legal services for crime victims, funded a food share market in the foothills, and provided financial assistance for families facing juvenile diabetes. You boosted fire mitigation on the western slope, care packs for foster kids, support for Afghan refugees in Colorado, and you were a lifesaver for rural public radio stations facing defunding. Mentors for students in Denver, 3 more wildland fire mitigation projects. It was a dry year. You funded a new Boys and Girls Club in Chaffee County, and you supported community mental health work after the Evergreen High School shooting. Thanks to you, more foreign-trained medical professionals got licensed to work here, more young people with autism got career coaching, more families in Loveland were kept out of homelessness, more early childhood teachers were trained in Adams County, and more kids in crisis were connected with free counseling. As the government shutdown hit, you delivered financial assistance for military families, then filled food banks in Weld County, Denver, Adams County, Arapahoe County, Boulder, Broomfield, and Jeffco. For the 6th straight year, you made sure every kid in Denver public housing got a holiday gift and boosted a campaign to deliver 10,000 Christmas gifts, closing out the year by supporting a center working with blind children to develop skills and confidence for life and providing medical care for survivors of assault. 52 weeks of relentless generosity, changing Colorado for the better. Thank you. Generosity in this community inspires me. If that inspires you to become a monthly donor to the Word of Thanks Fund, you put in your info one time, pick a monthly amount, and we automatically split it among all the wonderful causes that we feature. If you're interested in that, you can scan the QR code on your screen or text the word THANKS to 303-871-1491. And of course, even small amounts help because nearly 7,000 of you have signed up to give monthly. Even more of you chip in when you can on a weekly basis, and that is how you did all of that good in every corner of this state. Spring meteorologist Jayden Knowles now, and Jayden, it was winter for a little while there.
For only about a couple of hours, Kyle. Early Sunday morning, we saw that snow coming down early around 4 a.m. and then quickly, if you woke up at 11 a.m., you didn't see any more snow on the ground because we saw lots of sunshine. But cooler temperatures for this afternoon. As we head into tomorrow, the low 50s will make a way back. And then look at that. Yeah, you're reading that correctly. The low 60s for Wednesday as well as Thursday. Here's the reason why. Because that high pressure system continuing to track over towards the east. And that's the reason we're seeing those warm temperatures really as we head into the weekend. But then noticing there's a dip in that jet stream. That's some good news because we could see some high country moisture, some much needed snow that we do need. Not a whole lot, but overall, we could possibly see that late Thursday night into early Friday morning. So let's go ahead and practice. 3, 2, yeah, okay, Happy New Year. 37 degrees, that's exactly what we're going to see for overnight lows New Year's Eve into New Year's Day. So it's going to be nice and chilly, but overall, perfect conditions, nothing to cancel any plans. The rest of your 7-day forecast, of course, the low 60s, unfortunately, as we head into the weekend.
If someone thought that threatening to withhold food benefits from Americans would break food banks, they were wrong. We'll tell you how it made one stronger next. The SNAP food benefits disruption during the federal government shutdown made a huge impact in our community. One nonprofit feeding people in Denver says it was able to nearly double its distribution when help poured in from the state. This is Metro Caring's story.
On Mondays through the SNAP disruption, we've been operating a box distribution, which allows us to reach approximately 500 more households a week. My name's Emily Sedlkowski. I'm the Food Access Manager here at Metro Caring. So we knew with the SNAP disruption that was a really big impact for our community. And so with our market, we're limited in capacity on how many appointments we can accept. With the state funding of the emergency $10 million and support with partners like Food Bank of the Rockies, we were able to purchase a lot more food. We couldn't have done it without it. Really before November, our warehouse, our market shelves, it looked completely different. We were struggling for inventory every day. We're a little bit nervous about what this is going to look like heading into seasons after the holidays because all of the box items, everything that's in there is purchased. You're good. On a normal week through our market, about 600 households. With the additional boxes, we're doing approximately 500 additional households. We have partnerships with local farmers and ranchers and other vendors that we regularly purchase from. And so our ability to pivot in a moment like this and up our scale has been really helpful. We're putting in our boxes, we're making sure we do meat, eggs, milk, oil, fresh produce. It's become chronic, and these moments of emergency are becoming more frequent and the status quo. And so our ability to meet these moments is probably going to be fatigued. As we look into the future, I'm concerned. I think that a lot of us know and have felt the brunt of inflation. We haven't seen our grocery prices go down. We know that SNAP is actually only funded through September 2026. And with the House budget resolution over the summer, we know also that SNAP is on the table. They're here and they're feeling safe and secure, and that they're part of something bigger, that we're talking about food as a human right.
Metro Caring, two-time recipient of your Word of Thanks generosity over the years. Back with your feedback about what's wrong with my face next. Patricia writes in tonight to say, I am sorry to see the scruff on your face. It makes you look so old. Jim simply says, the beard does not help. I actually think it does help cover up my recent weight gain, but I think. Tracy says Kyle finally did it. Signed up to be a monthly donor to the Word of Thanks campaign. It's not much, only $10. That's it though, Tracy. It's all in together.